What's up, y'all? It's Mushfiq here, and today we're going to be talking about 3 signs you need to fire your therapist. Finding a therapist is often really hard, and it can feel so frustrating when you feel like you're not really getting anywhere. And sometimes it's really hard to see some of the red flags that are coming up. So we're going to talk about those things. So let's get right to it. One of the first red flags I want to talk about is a therapist talking about themselves too much or self-disclosing too much about themselves. Therapy should be about you and the struggles that you are bringing in. And when a therapist is talking about themselves too much or self-disclosing too much things that are not appropriate, that is a huge problem. Now, I'm not saying that therapists should never share things about themselves. When appropriate, self-disclosure can be very therapeutic. Sometimes it's important for you to know things about your therapist, but only if it's therapeutically necessary. So if a therapist is coming in and always talking about themselves way more than listening to you, that's a huge red flag. This in a session can look like them talking about their kids for half the session. Whenever you bring something up, they relate it back to them and just talk about their own lives. If you feel like you're consoling your therapist too much because they're going through it, that's a huge problem because that's not your job. Your job is not to take care of your therapist. Your job is to come in and be able to find solutions and listen to your therapist in a way that is therapeutic, and them being there present for you and them listening to you. If you're coming into a session and it feels like your therapist is only talking about themselves and you feel like you are being their therapist, I have to tell you that that's a huge red flag and something is off, and you should fire that therapist and find someone else. A therapy session should only be focused on you and the things that you are bringing in. And when people are self-disclosing like your therapist, it should be therapeutically beneficial for you. Other than that, it's inappropriate for a therapist to make a session about them and only talking about themselves. The second and really important red flag I always like to talk about is your therapist having poor boundaries and not respecting your boundaries. Oftentimes, you will hear horror stories of therapists being inappropriate. This can look like therapists reaching out to you to hang out with you outside of therapy sessions, therapists messaging you inappropriate things or making comments that feel really uncomfortable. Or if you set up a boundary, therapists not listening to it and justifying their actions rather than apologizing, moving on, and correcting their behavior. A therapist that is ethical should not be asking to hang out with you outside of sessions or therapeutic settings. A therapist that is ethical should not be messaging you inappropriate things or unprofessional things that is outside the realm of therapy, which means that in reality, they should be only contacting you about therapy-related things and also scheduling-related things. They should not be asking you randomly how your day was and making comments about random things or following you on social media. Those show really bad boundaries and also behavior that is highly unethical. So if you're noticing a therapist is wanting to hang out with you outside of therapy or messaging you unnecessarily or even trying to follow you on social media, run the other way. That is unethical behavior and that is not proper boundaries that a mental health professional should have. A therapist should be modeling correct behavior and boundaries for you, and when they're doing that, they're clearly not acting in an ethical manner. And the last one I wanted to talk about is very important to me too, is the fact that you do not feel understood or heard by your therapist. When we're looking at the research, it shows the biggest indicator of success in therapy is the relationship between the therapist and the client. That means whether you feel safe, seen, and heard by your therapist is the biggest factor of you doing well in therapy. So if you've had multiple sessions with a therapist and you constantly feel like they're judging you, or you don't feel understood by them, you don't feel seen by them or validated by them, there are chances that you might not be a good fit with that therapist and you need to change. If a therapist is making you feel like you're constantly having to explain yourself and constantly making you feel worse than good, that is not a good match for the most part because your therapist is not making you feel understood. And that's going to be the biggest factor of you succeeding in therapy and meeting your therapeutic goals. So let me just repeat myself. If you don't feel like your therapist is understanding you, and if you feel judged by your therapist after multiple sessions, chances are you guys might not be a good fit and you need to find someone else that will understand you and will make you feel validated. There are plenty of more red flags out there, but those are the big 3 I wanted to talk about today. If a therapist is making a session about themselves, if they're not having proper boundaries, and if you are not a good fit and you don't feel safe with your therapist, chances are you need to fire your therapist and find a good one. And I hope this video was helpful. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and let us know if there's any other videos you'd like us to make. Hope you have a great day.